today. I'd really like to welcome Judy Grisel. She's a PhD, and she's joined by Frank Z, and I think we've seen him before. So welcome back, Frank, and welcome, Judy. Judy is the author of Never Enough, The Neuroscience and Experience of Addiction. Frank Z is the co-founder of the Belfast Zen Center, and he's a mindfulness teacher. We're going to witness a conversation they're going to have between themselves, talking about Judy's life's work. I said that wrong. Talking about Judy's life and her work. And I welcome both of you. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you talk about. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie, and welcome, Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you.
Good to see you again, too. Just before we begin, everybody, maybe we'll just take 5 minutes just to center ourselves. Would that be okay? Yeah? We'll take 5 minutes. We'll do a 5-minute body scan. So we just take a moment just to be present, to notice where your attention is right now. Without judging, analyzing, or interpreting. Take a moment to give yourself permission to shift from doing to being. To be present in your body, noticing contact with the floor, noticing contact with your seat, and how your seat supports your body. Back upright, not too tight, not too loose. Lower your shoulders, left shoulder, right shoulder. Head upright, as though you're balancing a book on the crown of your head. And as you begin to settle into your body, notice any contact with your clothing against your skin. Notice the temperature of your room. Now gently guide your attention, like the beam of a torch, to your breath, and allow your breath to take center stage. Notice how you breathe, no right way, no wrong way. No effort, no adjustment. Your breath is always present. And a future breath, or a past breath, give yourself permission to be with this breath. And as you breathe in, follow the in-breath as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, follow the out-breath as you breathe out. Like a wave, rolling onto the shore and returning to the ocean. Be present to the ebb and flow of your breath. When breathing, just breathe. You become distracted, notice, and gently return to your breath. The birds they sang at the break of day. Start again, I heard them say. Don't hold on to yesterday or what is yet to be. Ring the bell that rings. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. A good stretch, a good yawn, a good scream, a good yell. Good evening, everybody. And of course, a big welcome to Judy. So, Judy, we know each other. We've met a few times and hope to see you in Ireland quite soon, maybe next month in Galway. I hope so too. It's not too far away, and I hope to get down there. So anyway, over the next maybe, say, 30, 40 minutes, we'll have a bit of a conversation between your good self and myself about, where we're at today and how we got to where we are today. And then we'll open up to the group for any questions for your good self or myself. So let's begin, Judy. What was it like being young Judy?
Geez, I feel like I was young Judy yesterday. So it was like a lot. I'm the oldest of three, and I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey. My father was an airline pilot and my mother a nurse, and they were pretty much had their acts together, it seemed, from the outside. I had a pretty normal upbringing and everything was going along smoothly, I guess, until sort of on a whim, I drank about a half a gallon of wine, and it changed the trajectory of my entire life in good ways and not such good ways. I just loved the feeling of being drunk. It was kind of the answer to the question that I didn't know I had. And I felt complete. And I also felt like I had the ticket for coping with life. And I was just about 13. So that, if anybody remembers, is kind of a tough time where you're wondering how to cope. And so I just thought I was going to kind of skip all the messy challenges in that and just basically use alcohol to feel better. So I spent about 10 years drinking and taking as many drugs as I could get my hands on, which was quite a lot in that short time. I was, kind of like a racehorse out of the gate with no jockey. So I just was reckless from the start. I know that's not what motivates everybody, but I'm pretty extreme still in a way, which I think is, both again good and bad. At any rate, I ended up homeless. I got kicked out of 3 schools before I was homeless mostly, and contracted hepatitis C, sharing needles. I eventually, by the time I was 22, hated myself, and pretty much everybody else did too. My parents kicked me out of the house. I was in trouble with the law. There were some court orders. And through kind of an inexplicable series of events, I guess, I ended up in a treatment center. This was in the 1980s, 1986. And I went because I thought treatment sounded like a spa, and I was tired, even though I was so young. And I figured, well, this will help. I need a break. So it wasn't so great. It wasn't much of a break. As many of us probably know, it was really a fork in the road to face myself and maybe live or not. But when I first heard about that fork, I heard from the treatment center that I had a disease. I'm kind of going on a little too much, but let me just finish this thought. So I heard I was dying from a disease that was lethal. And I thought, no way, I'm too young. I have partying to do. And besides, I don't want to live anyway. Anyhow, I thought I would fix the disease. I would cure it. And I was full of arrogance and ignorance. And I thought it would take me 7 years. This is just all crazy thinking. I thought, it's going to take me 7 years. I'm going to fix it. I'll be able to use, and I won't self-destruct. So that's what it was like.
And tell me, what do you think it was within the young Judy, right? That, after tasting that first drink, that half gallon or whatever amount it was, that made you become aware that you had a problem with drink and drugs? How did you wake up to that?
Yeah, honestly, Frank, we're sort of perfect counterparts, because awareness is almost my last choice. I like oblivion, and I did then, and I think I was well on my way. I was young, so I had some reserves, but I was kind of chasing that as fast as I could. What happened was so I had a provisional acceptance in the beginning. And it's sort of interesting because if you drill down in there, I didn't really accept powerlessness. I thought, okay, I have a disease. Something's wrong with my brain. Somehow I was oriented toward biology from, birth, I guess. And I figured I'll fix my brain. So I wasn't really into, the kind of awareness. And still, I would say it's dawning on me slowly, really. Mostly by a lack of other options, I hate to say. I probably should be a patient for you.
And then, Judy, what age were you whenever you stopped? Did you go straight to AA after the rehab?
I went to rehab for 28 days, and I went to a halfway house for 3 months, and then I took advice. because I was just going to, I was willing, I had this much willingness to take suggestions. And so I took them, but again, not with a, I said I was extreme, but I guess I wasn't extreme in that. It was provisional. So I was giving myself 7 years to come up with a cure.
Mm.
And at 7 years, what happened after taking all that advice was my life was about 1 trillion times better. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. So I didn't pick up then. So I got clean and sober on July 9th, 1986. And I stayed sober because at 7 years, things were much better. And also, really, by that time, studying the neuroscience of addiction, I was very convinced that my using was a dead end. That, the only way I could really escape myself was to be dead. And I guess I was curious enough not to do that. And I also don't happen to really struggle a lot with depression. So I kind of acquiesced to recovery.
Mm. And then, what age would you have been then? I'm just thinking, like you came out of rehab and then you went into that halfway house, and then what brought you to neuroscience? What brought you to university?
So I had just turned 22. I'm about to be 60. So in a month or so. And I wanted to fix it. I wasn't okay with powerlessness, really. But I also am someone who kind of hedges my bets. So I was following multiple lines at once, and none of them included picking up. So I did not pick up, but I took my compulsive energy and also my sort of avid, acquisitive, a little bit addictive nature and applied it to school. And that's kind of a miracle how I ever got a PhD and a good postdoc and a tenure track job, because when I decided to become a neuroscientist, I think my grade point average was about a 2.2 or something, pretty horrific. But, we're determined, and I'm definitely determined. And so, don't tell me I can't do it. And so it was partly that, probably more grace. And I, managed, I guess, to take my obsessive compulsive tendencies and direct them toward note cards and, tests and writing a dissertation.
Mm. And for the listener who would be interested in the world of neuroscience, could you maybe help us understand the neuroscience of addiction?
Sure, I can. I want to say that it took me a long while to understand it. When I started, I can't imagine what I thought, but I think it was similar to what the field thought, which was that people like me had some faulty gene or neurochemical or pathway that could be adjusted and we would be normal. So I was after that. And I started, they say you get a PhD always in trees, never in forests. Well, I started with a tiny leaf. So I was studying the role of peptides in the spinal cord, in morphine tolerance, and published papers that probably 3 people have read. So I'm going along like that. It's a good thing for someone who's, like I said, appetitive and very goal oriented. So I just kind of chased the next thing, which was tenure track and then tenure and then blah, blah. So I was going along with that for a good, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And honestly, this is sort of, again, my strength and my liability. I didn't take much time to look up. And then eventually, though, I did notice that despite my efforts and the efforts of thousands, hundreds of thousands of scientists, clinicians, parents, individuals, there were more people dying of addiction at that point and today than there were, a month ago. So it wasn't really helping. As a scientist, you're kind of stuck by the data, and the data was crystal clear and still is. And that is that your chances of dying in a gutter with a needle or a bottle in your hand are higher than they ever were. So I thought, wow, this is like a crisis. And, I guess I've had many crises and they've all been really useful. But this particular one, I thought, wow, overall, I'm not making any impact. So I decided to try to at least explain what I understood about addiction. And that's how I wrote the book. So that's what it is. And I would say two things. One is that there's really three causes. The first is about half the risk is genetic. The other half is environmental, but the biggest portion of that is picking up as an adolescent. So kids' brains are better able to learn anything, and addiction is a form of learning. So kids who use, like I did, and the earlier, kind of the stronger the influence, are especially prone. It doesn't mean you can't become an alcoholic or a drug addict as an adult. You certainly can. But that's, I guess, the second thing I want to talk about. So in anybody, the brain will adapt to regular drug use to counteract the effects of the drug. And the brain does that. It's kind of the big party pooper because it's a fundamental aspect of neuroscience, that homeostasis. The brain maintains a stable state of functioning. And the reason it does this is because if our brain, which is communicating with electrical chemical signals, were kind of bouncing around like a pond in a big storm, with waves everywhere, and something happened, like you threw a rock into the pond, you wouldn't notice it. And our brain evolved to help us survive. And we would not survive if we couldn't tell when the stone gets thrown in the pond. And the stone could be good or bad, but we need to know when something happens. So in order to ensure that we do know, anytime the surface or the activity of the brain is perturbed, the brain compensates for that perturbation and brings it back to a level state. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if you take a drug to wake up and be alert, then your brain compensates by making you lethargic and sleepy. If you take a drug to help you sleep and relax, then you get anxious and insomniac. If you take a drug to reduce pain, then you suffer. If you take a drug to make the world interesting, then you become a big bore and everything is boring. So it's always the opposite. And people would know this, I'll just say this one last thing, but withdrawal to any drug is always the exact opposite of the main effect of the drug. So whatever you're trying to get, you ultimately cannot if you use on a regular basis, which means there's no free lunch.
Thanks for that. Yes. And tell me then, Judy, what keeps you sober?
to be totally honest, I don't know. I think it is a mystery. I do
Mm,
believe I'm collaborating in my sobriety. I believe I am using my freedom that I now have since I don't have to get high to participate. And mostly what that looks like is showing up and being honest,
mhm.
which is dang hard. But I've seen enough people die that I'm not going to say, good for me, miss keeping myself sober. So I don't know. It sometimes, showing up is hard. Being honest is even harder. And I find that for me, the best way to be honest is to talk to other people like me and to listen to them because I'm so good at lying. I mean, we've probably many of us are like this, but honestly, not so much anymore. But I mean, I'm so slippery that I couldn't tell if I was lying for several years after getting sober. It was like another language, honesty. But it did help me to hear other people being honest and then saying, wow, I kind of see myself there. And so, in a way, I was given the capacity back by other people. But, it's I don't take it for granted. And I also don't think I have the recipe. I understand more about the problem than the solution in a way, except that I need to show up and be honest.
And you're definitely doing that. My good friend Paul Haller, who was the abbot of San Francisco Zen Center, arrives in Belfast tomorrow. And just when you said those two things are, with your honesty, and that was, I don't know, and about the mystery. I mean, those are two areas that he always talks about, whenever I'm having a conversation with him. And what's it like for you, Judy, the scientist, sitting in a place of not knowing?
Wow. It's probably even harder than getting sober. And
Mm,
that has been so how do I do that? I I think, uh, wow, I really struggle with that. Um, and it's so evident that I don't know. So I don't think I saw this kind of coming, but people say it all the time. The longer I'm sober, the less I know. That's for
mhm,
sure true for me. And I think on a good day, it's kind of delightful because one of the things I loved about drugs and alcohol was that, you never really knew what was going to happen. And so eventually it got boring, but because I kind of did know. But this not knowing means that uh, each moment is an opportunity for something kind of brand new. And I could maybe go on for 6 weeks about my just amazement at that. I really thought, I was 23, I thought, this is awful. My life's over. I can't use if I want to live, which, as I said, I didn't know. And I thought, why couldn't this happen to me when I'm 40 or 50 and my life is over anyway?
mhm, mhm.
Right. But I just thought, please, I couldn't imagine what I was going to do with my time, with my head, with my hands. I just couldn't think of anything without, worthwhile. And I was so wrong, so wrong. So I haven't been bored in decades, not for a minute. And I don't get on my phone that much either. I don't have social media. I don't do Instagram. So it's not that. It's that, like, just under the surface of everything, whether it's pain or the light coming through a dragonfly's wings, or my feet hitting the floor in the morning as I step out of bed. I mean, just right there is, reality. And I must be getting old and doty or something, but I think that there's nothing more rich and interesting. I know that sounds, if I had heard myself say that, I would think, lock her up. But it turned out it's really been true for me. So just to circle back, the only way I got to that was by facing the emptiness and the unknowing of my own capacity.
And tell me, what would your take be on the 12-step program?
Well, turns out to be the most effective thing. So I'm a scientist, and it's the most effective thing. That said, it's not that effective. That's why so many people are dying. I don't know how it works. And actually, this is kind of a fun thing as a scientist. So I've seen models of how it works. And these things are giant clusters. It looks like a solar system where there's all these arrows and numbers going from one thing to another, trying to parse like what leads to sobriety, the big circle at the end. How do you get from here to there? And so there are some things we can identify, some portions of the variance or the causes that contribute in all of us. And some of those are like you have something to do, you have a group to talk to, there's some social support, there's free coffee. I don't know if that really is included, but you can find it. But the biggest portion, the biggest influence in the 12-step in the scientific models, which is hilarious to me, is a mystery. It's like a big, who knows? So yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, I really have followed closely, of course, because I had a hidden agenda, and also later, just I'm trying to get grants and things. The research looking for effective treatments. And despite hundreds of millions of dollars and euros and all the effort and brilliant, committed scientists, there happens to be no more effective thing for most people. I always want to make the caveat that most of people with a substance use disorder die. It's turns out brain cancer is more curable. Right? You have better chances of surviving brain cancer than substance use disorders. Yeah.
And then tell me, Judy, never enough. Are you still seeking? Is it still never enough? Or
my husband would say yes. I think honestly, mostly it's still true. I have and I think part of it is my nature, and part of it is probably some of the damage that drugs did to my brain. So one reason we like addictive drugs is because they activate reward pathways, and kind of like listening to music too loud, especially if your ears are just still developing, it damages the sensitivity and could be permanent. So what happens is by turning up the volume, even though I liked the music, I really can't hear it, and I need to keep turning it up, and it sounds a little muffled. So it's hard to do this experiment. In humans, it's not possible to do it, and it's hard to ask, mice how they feel. But I do think I'm kind of not easily satisfied. I do like to change things. I do like to push on things. I do like to explore things. I do like to jump on an airplane or out of an airplane. I do like to, I'm just restless. And I think that, again, contributed probably to my propensity for drug use at an early age, but also, was what made me write the book. Like if I had just had my little nice corner office, which I did, and tenure and my, courses all worked up, I could have just sat there and grown dahlias for. But I'm kind of not the sit still type by nature, so I'm working on that, and maybe I'll be better, but not so much.
And can we look forward to another book?
I hope so. I have been on sabbatical this year, and I'm working on 2 books theoretically. The second one, which is going to be hopefully out second, although I don't have contracts, so I'm still deciding about this, is on kids and cannabis. Lots of misinformation and an amazing amount of crystal clear data that's not filtering down. So ask me about that later. And the book I'm working on now is really not for people probably like us, but it's tentatively titled Why Not Use Drugs? And I'm hoping that it will provide a kind of a guidebook for people who are using, let's say, but not with a substance use disorder or an addiction, and maybe not even at particular risk for that. So most people, this is the rub, most people who use mind-altering chemicals don't self-destruct, don't go off the rails. And so I think up until pretty recently, we've thought, well, you're someone like me who's going to die under a bridge or get sober, or you're someone who can just, kind of ignore the rest of it and use for good reason. And I'll have to be honest, if I were someone who could use without having problems, I would not be here today. So I'm not so noble. But I do think there are reasons to consider the fact that, 2 facts. One, there has never been more and better opportunity for shaping and polishing reality with mind-altering chemicals. It's so pervasive. Every person on the planet alive has, ample chance. And even though we've been using since before we were humans, Neanderthals were taking mind-altering chemicals, this is like a serious up in that game. And at the same time, I'm going to try to make the case in a nice way that never has there been a more urgent need for showing up to reality the way it is. And that maybe escaping it or evading it or even just tamping it down a little bit is contributing to the suffering.
And Judy, tell me, we're just coming towards the end of our part here. What's your take then on meditation?
Well, my take, I come to everything, I guess, with an immature stance, but I refused to meditate for a long time sober, absolutely refused. And it was a combination of kind of inexplicable grace and also politics and menopause that kind of forced me to take it seriously. So and it's just very hard, Frank, for me to be still. To, you asked about this earlier, to kind of dwell in the emptiness. However, I will say it is now the center of my practice, the most interesting and fruitful part of my life, the activity that gives me assurance that things are well, I am well. They're not what they seem. They are at a deep ground level, unfolding perfectly. So I don't, it's hard to get it with my words because they're not really able to capture what I'm experiencing. But I would say that when I picked up drugs, I loved the way they took me out of reality. And what I appreciate, and meditation has been for me the complete counterbalance to that, in that they open up reality. It opens up reality to me, which in fact is not something I really want to evade when I'm in my right mind. It's something that I want to be present to and appreciate.
And finally, you'll be pleased to hear, over here on the BBC, we have a beautiful program that's called Desert Island Discs. It's called Desert Island Discs. And what they say is, if you're on a desert island, Judy, right, what book would you take with you to the desert island?
Oh, I love this question. I think about this all the time because I love books. I have a few list. I love the 24-hour day book, and that would have been it for a while, but I basically memorized it. I love the writings of, is it Abraham Heschel, a rabbi who talks about prophets. Let's see. Oh my gosh. I don't know. What would I really do? Right now I'm reading The Inner Experience by Merton, which was his last book. I would take that because I want to finish it, and I'm going quite slowly in a group. I might take the Book of Psalms, actually. If I really could only have one, I think they pretty much feed and remind me of my life. So I don't know. That's a hard one. You said one. Geez,
Yes.
too bad.
Too
I know
bad.
enough. Yeah.
Well, what about an album? What music would you bring?
Oh my gosh. Like my Spotify. No, I'm kidding. Wow. I was just appreciating this song again by Robert Hunter and Jerry Garcia, Comes a Time. That's a really good one. I think the first line or the chorus is, comes a time when the blind man takes your hand and says, don't you see? But so I wouldn't just take a line though. What would I take? I wouldn't take Grateful Dead. I think I've been there and done that. I don't know, I'm a big Fish fan, but again, it's all about the live things. So once you've heard it 19 times, it's enough. I don't know. I think I might take some new, young jam band, something like Goose, or which hopefully I won't have to do it soon because I think they need a little more time. But anyway, I don't know. I probably take something my daughter or my family. I have 3 kids and they all are pretty good musicians, as is my husband. I'm terrible. So maybe I'd take something they recorded for me.
Well, Judy, a big thank you for me.